NuPhy has just launched their third generation of their wildly popular Air lineup of low-profile mechanical keyboards with this, the Air75 V3. And I have to say, it's a pretty huge step forward, especially in terms of sound, which is going to make it very tough to beat in the pretty competitive low-profile keyboard space. Before we get into it though, you should know that this keyboard was sent to me by NuPhy at my request, though they had no say in the video content, so as always, I'll do my best to share both what I like and dislike about the Air75 V3. That said, let's get into it. The Air75 V3 will set you back about $140 USD, which is $10 more than their Air75 V2 when it first debuted back in 2023. This is in line with something like the original Low Free Flow, and right between Iconix's Magi 65 and the MQ80, so about what I would expect for a hot swappable, low-profile keyboard with tri-mode wired, 2.4 GHz radio frequency, and Bluetooth connection options. Currently, there are only two color options available, Nebula Black or the Nova White version that I received, which has a silver body and white keycaps. So at least for now, they've removed the all-white option that they had previously offered. That said, by the time this video is released, there will be JIP and ISO layouts available, in addition to the ANSI version that I have here, which is really nice to see. Otherwise, you have the choice of NuPhy's Gateron Collection Nano switches in either linear red, tactile brown, or silent blush. The reds and browns are all palm construction with a 3.5mm travel, while the blush switches have a polycarbonate top and polyamide base and only travel 3.2mm. It's important to note here that you are currently limited to using these nano switches, which are the same as Gateron's low-profile 3.0 switches, because they use a different pin layout than NuPhy's previous in-house switches and Kailh's low-profile offerings. Though it's worth noting that NuPhy appears to already be selling heavier 60 gram force tactile Panda low-profile nano switches, as well as lighter silver linear Gateron switches that would be compatible. And I suspect we'll see even more development here because they're also using these switches in their kick keyboard. I received the linear reds as well as a set of silent blush switches, so stay tuned for sound samples. I'm happy to see that the Air75 V3 still comes with NuPhy's NSA low-profile keycaps, which are double-shot PBT, because I always enjoyed their look and feel. That said, they've dialed back the color palette, opting for simply white or black for both the letter pan and peripheral keys, with only a few color accents in their pastel-y yellow, orange, and turquoise, all of which can be replaced with simpler versions if you prefer a more mature and minimalistic look. And while the rounded, larger central letters remain, these are marked with a darker gray, which is much easier to read than the original, though they still aren't shine-through. That said, the Air75 V3 now comes with the ability to swap out, pretty easily, the top rightmost key for a knob by simply removing the keycaps on the surrounding keys, unscrewing it from the board using the included mini Torx driver, which reveals the 10-pin connection module that mates with the provided knob board. It's worth noting that the production model of the Air75 V3 will ship with both a tall and short knob option included, which would be nice for travel. However, the pre-production version that I received only came with the taller option. Based on my testing, the knob is nice and responsive, with strong tactile feedback when scrolling left or right, as well as a satisfying click. However, at least with this taller knob, it does feel a little flimsy on the stem. The Air75 V3's case has also undergone some revisions, now featuring a uniform bezel on all sides of the aluminum top, and the light bars on the top corners no longer diffuse the LEDs, but instead offer a 10-point pixelated look, which I kinda like. These still communicate things like caps lock, which turns the light bar all turquoise, as well as battery life, which you can lock to the right light bar by pressing function and backslash. Otherwise, these can be set to one of the 5 pre-programmed effects, and they have 7 color options. I'm glad to see that the light bars were kept, because they're an Air lineup staple that always nicely complements the north-facing per-key RGB backlight that reflects cleanly off of the white polycarbonate plate beneath the keys. One nice addition is that the back side of the keyboard now has a slot for the radio frequency receiver, which was absent from the V2 and is something I often take for granted until I'm traveling with the keyboard. Flipping the keyboard over, we find the same frosted ABS case base that I've come to expect from the Air lineup, which lightly diffuses both the side and backlight. There's also the familiar horizontal column motif, the polished NuPhy badge, as well as the now gray 2-stage kickstand feet. These allow you to increase the typing angle of the keyboard from its default 4-degree position to either 8 degrees or 10 degrees, all of which are a little bit higher than the second generation of the Air75, but still quite comfortable to use even without a palm rest. I'll also note that the Air75 V3 now has a slightly undercut base, which causes the top to hang freely over the sides and back of the keyboard, making the aluminum a little more prominent, which gives the keyboard a bit more of a premium look. Unfortunately, the case still appears to be sealed using snap locks, which makes it challenging to access and modify the internal structure. However, the Air75 V3 has seen some internal upgrades, including the switch to a plate-based gasket mounting system. Additionally, we find Gateron hot-swappable sockets, plate-mounted stabilizers with plenty of pre-lubing, and internal acoustic pads, including some foam, along with IXPE and PET switch pads, sandwiched between the polycarbonate plate and the PCB, and some more foam as well as silicone in the case base. Oh yeah, and though the Air75 V3 packs the same 4000 mAh battery as its predecessor, NuPhy have managed to optimize power consumption through their new driver and chipset, which has made a massive improvement in battery life, shifting from a pretty standard 220 hours of expected working time with lights off to a wild 1,200 hours. In my worst case testing with full brightness backlight, I managed to get 51 hours of use before I had to stop the test and start filming this video. It's easily the best battery life I've ever experienced on any keyboard that I've reviewed. That said, let's have a listen to the Air75 V3 because that's where I think NuPhy has made the greatest improvements. Compared to the Air75 V2, it isn't even close. The new gasket mounting system of the V3 has made this one of my favorite, if not my favorite sounding, low-profile keyboard. And that's saying something, because there's a lot of competition from the likes of Lofree and Iconix. As a heads up, I just received samples of Lofree's Flow 2.0, which is being released on Kickstarter soon, so subscribe for my thoughts on them in the next video. Overall though, the red nano switches of the Air75 V3 have a nice, higher pitch, marbly sound that compares well to its competition. And if you're looking for something for shared workspaces, the silent blush switches, though not the quietest silent switches I've heard, would be up to the task. Both the linear reds and the silent blush switches are very smooth feeling, and though the Air75 V3 doesn't have much flex, it remains comfortable for extended typing periods. To accommodate its magnetic keyboards, NuPhy shifted away from the open source QMK and VIA compatibility towards a proprietary firmware modification platform, NuPhy IO. And with the Air75 V3, this is the first keyboard they've released that exclusively works with NuPhy IO 2.0, which is currently still in beta, so don't be surprised if a few things change. Overall, the layout is a little bit different than the original IO, with the keyboard and its mode shown on the left side of the screen, and all of the different sections that you have control over represented as tabs along the bottom. I won't go into these in too much detail, but in addition to the basic key remapping options, which have you covered across 4 independent layers for both Windows and Mac, you also get advanced control options for things like SOCD, to allow you to set priority for one key over another when pressed together, and Tap Dance, which lets you prescribe different actions for single click, double click, and long presses. You also have plenty of control over both the backlight and sidelight color effects, as well as the ability to record and modify, though not script, macros that can be assigned to custom keys. You also get basic mode settings like Win-Lock control, or you can jump over into the overall settings page where you can perform firmware upgrades for both the keyboard and the radio frequency receiver, and you can tell the software whether you have the interchangeable knob in place or if it's set up as a button. And yes, the knob scroll and click functions are modifiable. All things considered, NuPhy IO is the best proprietary keyboard software that I've tried, and the second generation seems to be even more capable of everything that I want it to handle, so I have no hesitation recommending it. While NuPhy has added some pretty significant upgrades, like the massive battery improvements and the interchangeable knob to the Air75 V3, I think the most important thing is that the Air lineup now rivals its competition in terms of both sound and feel. Don't get me wrong, the Air75 V2 is an incredibly feature-rich keyboard, but to me it always felt a step behind from the typing experience. So, with its revised, more minimal look, this makes the V3 a much more complete and mature offering. But what do you think? Has the Air75 V3 missed something along the way, or is this the keyboard that you've been waiting for? If you plan to pick one up, check my affiliate links in the video description for my most recent discounts to try to save some money. And otherwise, if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.